Another week and therefore another morning meeting. Welcome back. Where were we? Sean, Dan, and I are back here to tell you what's happening and then lead you through the events of the day coming up. Based on the Network News Division's morning meetings, this program has the ethos of peace, love, and understanding throughout, and we welcome your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Love to get some new folks in as well as returning guests. And of course, if you're watching elsewhere, do not put smack in the chat. Dan, leaving the Knicks aside, how was your weekend?
It was great. Yeah, our oldest is home from school, so spent time with everyone. It was great.
Sean Spicer, a weekend summary, please.
Uh, Lots of enjoyable moments, zero accomplished on the to-do list.
Nice. By the way, we need the fact that we all live in New York, or Mark, you and I do, and clearly we live in apartments. No, with Sean being in New York, we could not gather in one's kitchen the way we could in DC.
It's true. I'm not sure what that's reference to, but it's true.
Sean's in New York City. We're all in the same city together.
Well, I would say my stay in your fine city is brief and quick. I found a location. I couldn't pull off a Halperin. I don't know the city well enough to do an outdoor location. So I am in and out. I couldn't risk it. I don't have that skill set. So I had to find a place to do this while I visited your fair city quickly. So it's not I don't know that it would have been able to pull it off if it was anything quicker than that.
Welcome in. Dan and I apologize to the mayor. Let's start with the White House pool because there's some interesting entries on here today. Those who accuse the White House of trying to box out people on the left or Ferners or the alternative press will be greatly disappointed. HuffPo, far left, print pool. BBC, Ferners, radio pool. Washington Blade, specialty press, secondary print. And Sean, tell everybody about John Frederick's Media Network.
John Frederick's Media Network started with a small radio station outside of Richmond and then expanded to other places now. It's not just radio, he's through Pennsylvania and Georgia, and he's got a series of websites that match them. So he's grown himself a little niche media network. But yeah, a right-leaning supporter. He was President Trump's chairman in Virginia 2016 and 2020.
And just a reminder, despite talk of the to the contrary, they still have not changed the seating in the briefing room. The legacy organizations, although shut out of the pool in many ways, nonetheless still have their
much to my chagrin, by the way. I will
have
say
their front row seats. Sean, can you forecast as a change coming there?
I don't know. I don't know that that's gonna come. But I will say that I've been an advocate for open seating. And I've let them know that that's my view. But
if they go that direction, I hope they call it festival seating.
Festival, okay.
Yeah, like at a concert. All right. President's got nothing on his schedule today except a closed press lunch with the vice president at 1 p.m. There's also no White House briefing. So who knows if something will change, but as of now, nothing. The vice president just having lunch with the president as far as we know. 4 o'clock, Howard Lutnick is giving the keynote address at something called the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum in Washington. The second lady is also participating in that event with a fireside chat. House is out. Senate is doing some confirmations. And of course, lots of conversations about reconciliation, which we'll talk about. 1 o'clock, Jerome Powell gives a speech in Washington to the Federal Reserve Board's International Finance Division. It's the 75th anniversary conference. Dan, what's the gift for 75?
Ooh, that's Jubilee, right? That's platinum?
I think it's platinum. I think it's platinum encrusted gold or something.
I remember with the Queen, when the Queen had her, 75th, yeah.
All right.
That was good. Very strong poll.
Very strong. In Turkey, there's negotiations, I believe, underway in Istanbul. The second round of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. We'll talk about that in a moment. 3:30 Eastern today, the man who authorities have accused of throwing the Molotov cocktails in Boulder is being arraigned in court. All right. Over the weekend, as you all know, Russia attacked Ukraine, and Ukraine engaged in an unprecedented attack inside Russia, destroying some of their air capability using drones with a long gestating plot that involved a lot of skullduggery and terms of how they got the drones into the country, embedded in wooden shacks. This morning, again, the Russia and Ukrainian delegations arrived in Turkey. And President Zelensky this morning in Europe, in Lithuania, I believe, talked about the status of the war. 109, please.
Europe, together with America, has better weapons than Russia. We also have stronger tactical solutions. Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that. Russia must feel what its losses mean. That is what will push it toward diplomacy. And when Russia takes losses in this war, it's obvious to everyone that Ukraine is the one holding the line, not just for itself, but for all of Europe.
So, Dan, the Joe Biden, Lindsey Graham, David Ignatius, Max Boot wing of the establishment says Ukraine, this shows that if Ukraine is given more weapons and more leeway, that they can force Russia to the negotiating table and end the war. Where do things stand now?
Yeah, I don't think this will force Russia to the table per se, but it is a sign. I mean, that they can hit Russia, that they can do some pretty serious damage. I mean, the way they did this is remarkable. That it sounds like over a year and a half, and the roofs of these things opened, and the drones came out, and I think one of the planes they hit was in Siberia. I think it is still true. Like, Putin has no intention of stopping, and therefore you either are going to stand up to him and fight back, or you're not. And so I don't, unless we're going to just give up Ukraine, I don't see an alternative.
Sean, how did if at all, how did the Ukraine unprecedented use of drones? There's lots of talk about how it changes the future of warfare, and I think there's something to that. But how does it change the balance of power in this particular conflict, if at all?
So I actually think look, I think it was a huge strike for Ukraine, and credit to them for how they executed this. They planned it. But I think it's set back any sense of these talks that are happening today. Putin is actually probably more pissed off today because he looks embarrassed, because it was embarrassing for him. So if you actually want to talk about peace, as much as this was a victory for Ukraine and it showed their prowess and their ingenuity and et cetera, there's no way that Putin's going to, he now needs to do something big and bold to show that he's going to strike back. So I actually think that this works against peace as much as I think it shows how asymmetric and like the ingenuity of the Ukrainian forces. But Mark, I will say this. Your first point is probably my biggest takeaway. The future of war. We look at what Israel did with that cell phone attack. Remember, whatever, 8-9 months ago, where they had them all go off at the same time. The Houthi attacks against some of our ships. This is the future of war. The future of war is drones, asymmetric warfare, drone warfare. This is not this. This is where things are headed, and I think it's if anything, not just what happened yesterday, but if you're a U.S. policy planner, this is what you should be looking at going forward, because this is the threat that we face. And this is how people are going to attack each other, both state and non-state actors.
All right. We'll talk more about it, I'm sure, this week, because it's my spidey sense says it's a critical moment. China. Lots going on with China. Scott Bessent yesterday suggested the president would talk soon to Chairman Xi. And the Wall Street Journal says that's going to happen this week. Incredible story in the Wall Street Journal about this debate about whether decoupling from China is only going to help them draw them closer to Europe and allow them to develop even more superiority in things like EVs, but also in chips, etc. So lots of conversation there. And then Jamie Dimon was kind of critical of U.S. policy. So here's Scott Bessent on Face the Nation yesterday, 106, defending the status of the coupling, decoupling, uncoupling, recoupling relationship.
Have you underestimated the Chinese state's backbone here?
Again, Margaret, I hope it doesn't come to that. And Jamie's a great banker. I know him well, but I would vociferously disagree with that assessment that the laws of economics and gravity apply to the Chinese economy and the Chinese system, just like everyone else.
All right. He also said he buys a lot of stuff on Amazon. but it wasn't an endorsement.
By the way,
Sean,
he
yeah.
continues to show what an amazing surrogate he was. He destroyed Brennan over and over again in that interview where she tried to come at him. I think he did a fantastic job throughout the entire interview.
And Russ was pretty good on his Sunday show appearance as well
Yes.
on CNN. Sean, what's the status of this U.S.-China toing and froing and froing and toing?
Well, so there's the U.S. China piece of this. I think you heard them lean into a call that the two leaders will have soon. I think that's smart. I think that it is a little bit frayed right now. You've heard, we talked about this last week, the idea that they're acknowledging that things are slower than I'd like. But I also think that the broader point that you brought up this needs to be the focus. We've got to stop pretending that we want to, we say these touchy-feely things about China. We want to engage with them. The bottom line is we should be pretty open about it, and pretty open about it with Europe and everyone else, that you have to choose a side here. Because that's the bigger thing. So there's the direct conversations that we're having with China, and then there's the conversations we need to be having with the rest of the world to say you need to choose. This isn't like between two equal things. It's not like going to Target or Walmart. You're choosing between good and evil.
Dan.
Yeah, I think that I agree with Sean, but then the question becomes the way the Trump administration is doing this. So you're playing real hardball with Europe. You're playing real hardball with Europe economically. We'll see on Ukraine, but you have your first 4 months been pretty tough on the Europeans in terms of arms and how much money they spend, etc. You've been very friendly to the Middle East, who is very friendly with the Chinese across the board. Saudi Arabia and company do not seem to be wanting to choose. And we're going to build AI centers and other things, which several people have raised. Does that technology wind up being sold off to the Chinese? So if that is the goal, and I think you're right, Sean, how do we tackle China in the 21st century? What are you doing going around to the rest of the world trying to bully them into submission? Because the rest of the world may go in the other direction.
Yeah. And I think although I will say that there's a difference between treating them as adults and friends by saying, hey, our trade practices are not friendly. I get some of the tactics might not, but at the same time, this is an existential question. Do you really, if you're the rest of Europe, do you really want to be friends with them? Is that who you're going to put your lot in with for the long term?
Well, look, I'm not arguing on behalf of the Chinese, but what you read is they are a stable partner. They're the devil we know because they don't like massive change, right? The Chinese as a culture are fairly cautious. They want predictability. They're so obsessed with their economy and development. And we are seen as unstable. Now, that unstable position is because Trump's trying to enact a lot of change that he thinks will be for the better. But one is offering carrots and one is offering sticks. And that it may work, but we have to be cognizant that there are a lot of sticks being applied around the world to people who don't like it.
And by the way, they're carrots cooked in hot, spicy garlic sauce.
Ooh.
So they're delicious. All right, let's talk about reconciliation. First, I have an opening question. I saw some senator, I can't remember who it was, a Republican senator say, well, July isn't a realistic deadline. Really, this is going to be September. Guys, isn't the debt ceiling going to be breached before September, and therefore this is a real deadline? It can't be September. Or am I missing something? Is it possible that Bassett could move the X date to September?
I think it's in between. Like it's probably end of July, beginning of August. And the bottom line is it doesn't matter. Here's the deal. As much as the bigger forcing mechanism, to be honest with you, isn't the debt ceiling. It's the August recess. In a non-election year, these guys need to be home. They want to take a vacation with their family. So as much as the real policy issue is the debt ceiling, the reality is the August recess is where they don't want to be sitting around Washington debating a bill.
Yeah, I also think they want to go home and sell it and not have to go home. Right. If there are problems and there are headlines of massive cuts, do you want to go home in August holding town halls, just getting pummeled on Medicaid cuts and everything else? No, you want to go home and say, we cut your taxes.
All right, look, and by my count, about 46 of the 53 Republican senators are yeses today, no matter what. So you just got fewer than 10 who have various concerns, and most of them are going to fall into line, particularly when the real lobbying starts by Trump I think MAGA is going to come all in for the bill whenever it's done. And the establishment is for the bill. Here's maybe the number one member of the Gang of 500. If you were ranking Gang of 500, 1 through 500, he may be number one. Please roll 107, please.
So I think, first of all, I'm thrilled they got it through. And I think Michael Johnson did an unbelievable job doing that. I think the Senate, I think they should finish it. I think increasing consistency, keeping the tax rates going that allow business to invest, small business to large business, is really important for growth and et cetera. And if you go back to the bill in 2017, it brought back trillions of dollars to the United States. It created a lot of jobs. It created a lot of growth. And people, when they look at those numbers, they don't accurately say what those are. So it will work. Then they should go back and worry about cutting, literally looking at, and I shouldn't say cutting, making things more efficient around, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. It could be done, but I think they're better off just getting this thing finished as best they can. The smaller the deficit is, the better.
Man, he sounds like Caroline Levitt's deputy.
I was going to say, I didn't know Jamie Dimon was part of
deputy spokesperson. So look, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and the groups of the Democratic left are going to be against the bill. But if you're looking to pick off, everybody but Rand, because I don't think you're going to get Rand, Sean, who might be against the bill, who might have influence with the 7 or so Republican senators who could conceivably vote no? What outside forces? Any?
I think there's two camps. There's the Susan Collins Murkowski camp that's worried about the quote unquote cuts. Rod Johnson's. I don't think.
The Chamber of Commerce is and all. They're all going to be for. They're all going to be for the bill. Like I understand who the senators are and what their issues are. But I'm asking, are there any outside forces that will pressure them that will be a counterforce to Jamie Dimon, Charlie Kirk, etc., who are going to be for it?
Aside from Trump and sort of the MAGA, like in other words, does Ron Johnson, as much as he's fighting for, does he care about Charlie Kirk and Tucker and whatever saying? So I don't know, because I think that
I'm interrupting you again because you're still not answering my question. Are there any outside forces that will be against the bill that have influence with the senators?
Oh no, I'm sorry, no, I didn't hear I didn't understand the question correctly. No, there are not.
Okay, Dan, are there any?
No, absolutely not. They're all going to be for it. Yeah,
and that's why we all think it'll eventually pass, because there'll be people at their town halls who don't like it, but whatever. All right. Tragedy in Boulder yesterday. This accused guy being arraigned today, as I said earlier. Republicans are seizing on the fact that the accused appears to have come to this country legally and been allowed to stay because of the policies and practice of the Biden administration. Dan, I'm already hearing from Democrats who say, if we don't get ahead of this, we are morons. We cannot be on the wrong side of denouncing this man's presence in the United States. What say you?
Yeah, 100%. And I think I am really watching my former boss, Jared Polis. He's the governor of Colorado. He is Jewish. He is thinking of running for president. He cuts a lot of different paths in terms of being very pro-business, yet he's very progressive on social issues. How does he handle this? This issue still vexes the party, whether it's the protests on college campuses or what we should do to bring the war in the Middle East to a peaceful resolution. What does Jared Polis do? Boulder's a very progressive city. It's where he lives. It's where his kids went to school. I'll be very curious. And other 2028ers, I'll be really blunt. If you want to try to put Jared in a box, you want to try to cause some mischief, does everyone speak up? But I agree with you, Mark. We got to be clear on this.
So here's the question. Can I ask what's this is what I'm intrigued by.
Yeah.
Is this illegal immigration, or is this the failure to call out the growing tactics of people who are siding with Hamas? I mean, which is the
yes and yes?
It's both. It's both, but both must be done if to be politically effective with clarity, and it's going to involve repudiating parts of the Democratic Party, because if Fox is reporting about this guy's immigration history is accurate, you're going to have to say the last Democratic president failed in enforcing our border laws to an extent that someone who had no business being in this country was not only in this country, but allowed to attack elderly Americans, including a Holocaust survivor. I mean, you have to speak with a precision and clarity about that one, and then also on the second point, as you said, that this is also, you have to say the pro-Hamas movement in this country is breeding violence.
Yep.
It's not just breeding free speech; it's breeding violence. And I've not heard a single Democrat speak with clarity, including Jared Polis, on either of those so far.
Well, and that's the only.
People did after the attack in Washington, but the challenge was there was a handful of prominent Democrats who it was like pulling teeth to get to say anything, who took almost 24 hours before they put statements out.
Dan, I got to disagree with you. They denounced it, and they denounced anti-Semitism, but they didn't talk about specifically about the anti-Semitism of the left. They just denounced anti-Semitism. It's a different thing.
Okay, fair enough.
So there's two things that I think are I mean, last week on that podcast, Pete Buttigieg, when he was asked about mistakes, one of was how, quote, we handled COVID, and the second was immigration. He said we should have been stronger on the border. So at least there's an acknowledgement on that. But I do think that when I asked about this is the fascinating thing. Number one, I find it amazing that here we are, 12, 14 hours afterwards. And to your point, we have yet to hear a single Democrat have to be forced to call out either one. One, the illegal nature of this person being allowed to stay in this country. It wasn't just that he snuck in. He was overstayed his visa and then, according to DHS, literally allowed to stay in, given a work permit. Yeah. Second, I think the Israel thing has the potential to become the bigger issue in the Democratic Party, because you're seeing these tactics over and over again. And at some point, there's a fault line where somebody's going to jump the shark. The immigration one, to be honest with you, as a Democrat, Buttigieg did it the other day and no one said a thing. It's almost easier to come out there and say that. But the idea that these guys are not having, someone's going to have to take a side sooner rather than later. And there's a fault line on how they come down, because it is now gone from which side are you on to allowing and permitting what seems to be not seems to be, but is violence against other Americans with sort of impunity and silence from the left.
Okay, let me just break down one thing. Talked about this before. The administration should stop giving all their exclusives to right-wing media, because they're not doing themselves or the public a good. Fox has reported this guy's alleged immigration history. Everybody should report it. And CBS News and the New York Times should be hungering to understand this guy's immigration history. And Democrats, once they learn it, assuming Fox's reporting is right, their attitude shouldn't be, well, my press secretary says I grudgingly need to acknowledge this. They should be outraged, and they should be genuinely outraged. And if they don't have genuine outrage, they should quit. Because if this immigration history is true, there should be genuine outrage, not manufactured, not faux, not tactical, but genuine outrage that Americans were almost killed by somebody who was allowed to stay in this country illegally. And if the immigration history is true, it's not a close call. He shouldn't be here.
Right. Well, and it's twice now in whatever a month that there have been attacks. I mean, obviously what happened in DC and now. And look, I think part of this, Mark, is watching Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, two New York City people. Both of these communities are strongly represented here.
They should be genuinely outraged, and I haven't heard it from them.
Let me just touch base on the tactic, because I don't necessarily.
Oh, and then Governor Shapiro's house too. Somebody mentioned too. Yeah, firebombed. Yep.
Yeah.
But the funny part about this is we don't know, and I agree. So I agree with you to the extent that if the White House is not trying to pitch these stories to other outlets, I agree with you. But my experience in the past is that a lot of these stories, when you push them out, you get the pushback like, we're not going to cover that, or we don't know. And so at some point you go, well, you know what, guys, if you're not going to, like the 100%. This morning on Courtney in the chat is saying the same thing. They're not even acknowledging
100%. But here's what you have to do to overcome their bias. Free advice to the White House, because it's good for America. I'm not trying to help them. I'm trying to help America. Call the immigration reporters. Don't call the political reporters. Call the immigration reporters. Bring them into the Roosevelt room with the White House counsel or whoever. Give them the documents. Walk them through it and say, we're confident that your audience would like to know this guy's history. Here it is. And here's a handout with a graphic that you can put right on the air. You can't just say it from the podium because they're too biased to listen. Okay? But you got to take the extra step. But it's not that big a step. And the American people should know. We should be having a debate about this guy, and it's got to be based on facts, not on haziness. All right, we're going to go quick here because we're going to get to your questions. Please raise your hand. Kamala Harris didn't speak to the California Democratic Party convention, but that event was covered by lots of journalists, as was the South Carolina Democratic Party event over the weekend. And the takeaway of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Politico, here's one of those headlines, 105 Washington Post, some Democrats are moving on. They interviewed a bunch of the delegates out in California. In South Carolina, people were not super excited about Kamala Harris running for president. In California, all three news organizations came away feeling, if she runs, whatever, but she doesn't clear the field and people aren't super excited. Dan, what is the status of Kamala Harris for 26 for governor or 28 for president as you see it?
I think they're actually both very similar, which is there is not an appetite for her. There's trepidation about what she's going to do. And the feeling is like, why do you want it? Why do you want to be president? Why do you want to be governor of California? She's done nothing to begin to tease this out. Like this goes to the 2024 campaign. What are you passionate about? Like, who is the authentic Kamala Harris? And do you have this burning desire to do A, B, C, and D for the country, for California? And I think the longer she waits, the longer everybody moves on because there's so much energy in the party to tackle, to confront Trump, to deal with issues of this country. And she's just silent.
Yeah. And she says she'll decide by the end of summer. And a lot of Democrats are saying,
if
you really want to be governor of California, decide. Sean, does she appear formidable to you for either office?
No. In fact, if I don't understand, I don't know why anyone's quote on the sidelines waiting for her decision. Frankly, I think if I were a potential candidate in either, well, not in the presidential race, but in the governor's race, I'd just getting out there. And I mean, like, she is not somebody who I would fear, politically speaking.
All right. So Bill Clinton's out selling his new novel and did an interview with CBS. And once again, I will say, no reporter should ask any Democrat, did you ever see cognitive decline in Joe Biden? They should not ask that question because the answer is, yes, I did because I watched C-SPAN. And yet they're trying to think that they're going to suddenly admit, oh yeah, I saw massive cognitive decline in a private meeting and I never told anyone. It's the wrong question. You're never going to get an answer. But here, CBS News.
Can you ask? Yeah. So let's flip the script. What is the right? How do you phrase?
Right. There's one right question. You saw, along with everyone else, cognitive decline of Joe Biden. Why didn't you do anything about it? That's the question. It's literally, as far as I'm concerned, the only question. Why didn't you do anything about it? And if you'd like me to stop the interview and show you 10 C-SPAN clips from 2019 through 2024, I will. But I know you saw it, Mr. President, Mr. Cabinet Member, Ms. Cabinet Member. So here is a woman from CBS News, access to Bill Clinton, asking the wrong question.
Did you ever have a moment with him where you thought maybe he was unfit to run for president? No.
I thought he was a good president. The only concern I thought he had to deal with was, could anybody do that job until they were 86? And we'd had several long talks. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So I didn't know anything about any of this, and I haven't read the book. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape.
Again, the journalists at CBS News are so outraged by their corporate owners. I just don't understand how that interview could occur that way. In any event, Bill Clinton said he never saw it. And I'll say again, Dan, we saw this last week when Joe Biden did a 3-minute gaggle with the press. He has good days and bad days. It's possible that whenever Bill Clinton was with him, he was having good moments because they arranged his schedule so he'd have a good moment. It's 100% possible. And if you don't believe that, go watch him on Friday. He was fine on Friday. You could fly back individual answers, but he's fine. He does not, even to this day, he still has good moments of lucidity. Not enough to be president, however, because you're supposed to be lucid pretty much the whole time.
The conversation that we're having right now sounds like we're talking about a parent in a nursing home.
Yeah.
They still have good days.
Yeah.
the president of the
Yeah.
United States.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
idea that we're debating how many good days or bad days the leader of the free
Yeah.
world has is
Yeah.
in itself the problem. But the
Correct.
things with Clinton that don't make sense are, number one, to your point, how can you, regardless of whether you had a moment with him or not, the question is, how do you look at moments when he's calling out a dead congresswoman? How do you look
Yeah.
at and not have that problem? Number two is he says, I have a question about how anybody could do the job till 86. Well, how do you answer that question then? That if you have that obvious question about anyone, quote unquote, till 86, and then you see a guy who constantly has public problems making it through events, why wouldn't, I mean, it just, he literally, you have to, what Clinton said depends on the definition of is. Because
Yes.
it was, I had to work that in.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense. The guy, you're saying, I have problems, and yet you know that he has issues getting through events. So how does that not, when you have those conversations that you claim you had with him, that not come up?
Dan, I assume you don't know what the Clintons think about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. So I'm inviting you to speculate. What do you think the Clintons think about what happened and what's happening?
Well, I said this at the time that the Clintons were never going to be the point of the spear to force him out, because Bill Clinton, when he was president, had a spear pointed at him over Monica Lewinsky and all the different allegations. And he resented all the people, Joe Lieberman, God rest his soul, and others who thought that Clinton, probably should leave office. So they were the last ones they were just never going to put pressure on Joe Biden. They were the first to endorse Kamala Harris of the outside people immediately that Sunday afternoon. So I just think he was never going to do it. I actually, my biggest takeaway, it was sad to see Clinton's hand shaking. He sounded extremely old in that. His voice is getting kind of weaker. So the Clintons were never going to force him out. And God bless them. I think they're going to keep working to try to help the party fix itself.
All right. Let's just play. We won't comment on it, but
I love the Clintons. I'm never going to say anything about
it. just play the other Bill Clinton soundbite. This is about Bill Clinton on the Democratic Party and Trump, just so everybody can hear another Bill Clinton soundbite.
Do you worry that the only thing that unites the Democratic Party is a hatred of Trump? It's the only thing everybody can agree on.
If I thought that were true, I would, but I don't think it's true. I just think that most people don't have any idea. Most people who are criticizing the Democrats right now have no idea how difficult it is to decide the right thing to do. I think it's not as easy as people think. That will come, elections will happen, and we will see. President Trump has a right to do what he thinks is right. He's doing it. The courts are doing their jobs. There will be other elections. But someone needs to stand up and say, damn it, what we have in common matters more. We cannot throw the legacy of this country away. We cannot destroy other people's trust in us. We need to preserve that and find a way to work together and not humiliate other people just so we can win. We got to just calm down and try to pull people together again.
All right, one or two short points each. I'm going first, just one or two short points. First of all, why is that man wearing an analog watch? I'm not surprised, but he is. And second, Dan, I disagree. I mean, his hands are shaking a little bit, but I thought he was sharp and sounded like Bill Clinton from 40 years ago. All right, Sean, two short points, or you can pass.
I'll give you one. Stop and reflect on the quote that he gave.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand how difficult it is to do the right thing.
Well, what he means is to figure out where the party should stand.
I get it, but just
stop flying. All right.
I'm just
Dan.
I think though, but you know what though, Sean? Hillary struggled with this. Like, I think they have struggled the last decade to figure out where the party should go. And I think it's tormented them. And I think he still doesn't know. Now, to your point, Sean, he's saying the quiet part out loud, right? Like it's kind of jarring to hear him be like, damn it, politics and triangulating is really hard.
But I think, Dan, your point though can't be overstated. That when you have been through the barrel, right, which he has, she has, they have a degree of sympathy that most people don't fully appreciate. And I think that's important to understand. When you've been through the process or taken the shots, you have a degree of understanding and sympathy that most people don't. And so I think that constantly comes out with Clinton.
Yep. All right. Last thing, we probably should have led with this. One of the leading figures in Donald Trump's Washington is expressed obvious Nazi sympathies in public, no less, and he must be denounced. Please roll 110. Cory Booker over the weekend, obviously expressing sympathy for Adolf Hitler, for Eichmann, for Nazis throughout history with this offensive gesture. I'm being sarcastic. He did exactly what Elon Musk did. Dan didn't even know about this. That's how little the media covered it. When Elon Musk did the exact same thing, he was called not just a Nazi sympathizer, he was called a Nazi. And when Cory Booker does it, it doesn't barely get covered. Sean and I only know about it from social media. Dan, your reflections on this outrage.
Thankfully, we record this show, so history will show that I said that the criticism of Elon Musk was ridiculous and absurd, and I stand by that with Cory. I mean, I did like there was like pride coloring underneath him and the California flag behind it, a little bit of a different backdrop, but I do not believe Cory Booker nor Elon Musk are Nazis.
So you're saying that the pride coloring and the California flag takes a little bit of the edge off his avowed Nazi
He's a
sympathy.
Progressive Nazi.
Yeah.
He's a progressive Nazi.
Sean,
there's so many jokes I could make.
Sean, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you to role play. You're the spokesperson for the dominant media, which ignored this after covering Elon. What's the best way to explain it?
Well, you know that Cory Booker, has been an advocate of so many like progressive causes. It would be unfathomable to think that he could possibly be associated with any kind of movement of that sort.
Whereas Elon Musk,
he gave a 25-hour speech, for goodness sake. There's no way he could be bad. He spoke for 25 hours about Donald Trump's. Like,
there you go.
But the idea, by the way, as I was tweeting this out last night, the number, and I was searching, I said, Elon Musk, not because I was trying, the number of media outlets and progressive folks on the left in their Twitter outrage when he said that at the Capital One Arena during the inauguration said, we cannot forget this. This must live. We must ensure that people understand what a Nazi he is. And those same people.
Sorry, go ahead.
When Spartacus,
Deborah, you silenced Sean. My gosh.
I didn't. Spartacus is a Nazi should be the new hashtag.
All right, Deborah, welcome in. Tell
God.
folks who don't know what's on your mind. And Deborah has a lot on her mind regarding many things, including she'll start with explaining why Elon Musk isn't allowed to do it, but Cory Booker.
I'm not going to touch Elon. He has his own problems. I wrote to you, Mark, this morning about the situation in Boulder. I lived there for 17 years. I'm not Jewish, but people say I'm Jewish. I was very involved in the Jewish community. I considered converting. I know people who were at that march. I'm getting teary-eyed about it. One woman I know she's safe, and I'm checking on some of the older people. And I think the thing that upset me so much was seeing, I found these on Twitter, and I must admit I didn't verify if they were fake or not, so I don't know. But the headlines from some of our legacy media or some of the sublines, for example, CNN says a man reportedly set people on fire in Boulder, leaving multiple individuals injured. The city's police chief said, as people gathered for a quote peaceful protest. What's with the quotes? Why do we need the quotes about whether that was peaceful or not? Or, for example, there's a lot of like passive voice too, like something was done. There's multiple people burned. There's, you don't know that there's actually a perpetrator in this. There was also, let me find this other one here. And New York Times said 6 people were injured at an event to support Israeli hostages. Witnesses reported that a makeshift flamethrower was used. There's no person doing it. Right. There's just that. Another friend told me today, and I don't get the paper version of the New York Times. She said the story was on page 15 of the New York Times. This was weird. NBC News, multiple Gaza hostage awareness marchers injured in attack in Boulder. So anyway, we're reporting this. I don't know if there's a point at which the legacy media is going to ever realize like what they're doing and how wrong it is. I don't know. I mean, do you think there's any moment of them realizing this has been a very bad way we've been going about this, or are they going to keep doing this sort of thing when it comes to this topic?
Deborah, I'm going to take a huge risk and make the joke by saying, imagine if Jews didn't control the media, how much worse it would be. All right, Dan.
Oh man. Look, I think that they don't cover it partly because it divides the Democratic Party, which is mostly a lot of their viewership, readership, depending on how you want to look at that. And this has been true of immigration. They don't want to admit that all these problems, just like they didn't want to talk about Laken Riley and all of these other issues. They don't want to now talk about the fact that somebody, what does Trump say? The rapists, murderers, terrorists, etc. Well, if you give credence that one of them was, a terrorist, for lack of a better term, alleged terrorist, it just, you're feeding Trump.
Sean.
I mean, I love how you're bringing this up, because this is so true. How these things, and this is why when we talk about the media, what people I don't think fully appreciate sometimes is that the narratives and how issues are cast, how stories are covered or not covered. What we just talked about with respect to Cory Booker, the idea that you can just ignore something. As you were talking, though, there was an angle. Remember those two individuals who were attacked last week in Washington, D.C.? One of my former colleagues, a woman named Sarah Williamson, had this great take that was fascinating. When the killings took place, the media framed it as two Israeli embassy workers. They weren't targeted. The killer had no idea, that I assumed, that they worked where they worked. They were killed outside of a Jewish center, a museum. They were targeted because of their faith. It wasn't where they worked. And yet the media wanted to frame it as though it was an Israel issue, not a faith issue. And how these stories are framed makes a difference. And the idea that the Democratic Party has largely been silent as people have been targeted for their faith, to me, is a big problem. We are literally not having a policy debate. We're going and attacking people because of the faith that they share. And I find it outrageous that the left has been able to get away with it, and how the media's covered this.
Well, I think, again, I do want to keep saying the Democratic Party is calling out the anti-Semitism. What they're not doing is talking about the party, kind of the way this is fermenting within the certain parts of our party. Like, there is a difference. You have to do both. Mark, I think you said it, right? You have to have clarity and purpose to say, hey, folks in the party who are sympathetic to the Palestinians, like, you cannot be supportive of this. You cannot be quiet about this. You have, just like certain members of the squad who were silent for 24 hours.
I just wanted to say too about, just the degree to which people are terrorized. I mean, it's like I get moved. I'm not scared, but I heard even John Podhoretz after the shooting in DC talking about how he was afraid to go to like Shavuot events like tonight. And I know friends, they're having to up the security at their synagogues. And I know these small children that I've taken care of all these years who are Jewish, their mom's a rabbi. And I just think about if like anyone touched a hair of their head, and the people have to be scared to go to their places of worship. It just, in this country, it just seems so wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
We agree. Deborah, thank you. Appreciate it. Andrej, is that how you pronounce your name? Could you unmute? Yeah.
I'm unmuted.
There you go. How do you pronounce your name correctly, sir?
Andre, you don't need to pronounce the J. That was just my dad coming through Ellis Island.
Andre, okay. Welcome in. Appreciate you joining. Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind, please.
New York City. Haven't slept a lot in the last 24 hours with the news from Ukraine, so I'm glad you guys brought it up. We woke up yesterday morning and I thought it was a bad day because there was 500 drones and Shaheds that attacked Ukraine in the morning. But then 2 hours later, we went on to the next news story, which was the giant operation. So the fact that everybody was talking about it, Fox News really talking about it this morning. Most of the conservative outlets are talking about it this morning. Unfortunately, I think that even with all this good progress, what we saw in Istanbul just in the last half hour is that they decided to not do anything other than possibly announce another prisoner transfer. So as much pressure as Ukraine is putting on, we still don't have the American pressure with those, that sanction bill. I believe that the sanction bill doesn't get put on even a voting block until after President Trump goes to G7 and NATO. Is that your guys' estimation as well?
They certainly don't seem in any hurry to have it taken up. But I wouldn't be surprised if it changed, if facts are on the ground change. The president's current posture towards Putin is really unclear. So I think you're right on the current trajectory, but I wouldn't be surprised if it changed. Sean.
I agree. I mean, I don't know that the meetings are going to be the driver, right? I mean, you mentioned G7, et cetera. I don't know. That's why I said, unfortunately, just to be clear, I love what Zelensky and team did yesterday to show their prowess. The problem is that you know exactly how Putin's going to react to that, right? We all know he's not able to sit back and say, wow, I better make a deal. It's going to embolden him to some extent to say, now I need to show the rest of the world. And so we're going to have further destruction, further killing. The concern I have is more that Trump gets frustrated by saying, you got to be kidding me. Now you've pissed Putin off. And so I think, like I said at the outset, I think we may have actually delayed where we're going or where we hope to be.
Dan.
Yeah, I look, every time we've tried to do peace deals, Putin's lobbed these attacks, leading into them to try to bully, Ukraine into submission and get Trump to kind of capitulate. And now they said, what's good for the goose here. So.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to be clear on this. Like, I'm not urging Ukraine not to fight back. I just want to, I know I do more than Mark. I actually read the chat. And I'm not, they have every right to defend I read it. I don't glance. I'm a full on reader. And so but I'm just saying, if you I'm trying to be analytical on this and say, where does this end up now? Not that, Ukraine has every right to defend itself and to show its prowess. I'm just trying to give people where I think the president's head's going to be after seeing this, which is that I think he's going to say, you got to be kidding me.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, the problem is Trump wants a deal and one party absolutely does not want a deal, and that's Putin. Yeah. He just does not.
Andre, what's your connection to Ukraine?
I was just there in February. I've been there 14 times since the beginning of the war in 2022, but I do advocacy for Ukrainian Americans here. So mostly going around with city council people, but I've done a bunch of national stuff as well. I'd like to point out that what we... Yeah, go ahead.
Personal, or is there a bit? I mean, you have history, family? Is it just a personal issue to you?
Because my dad befriended an Air Force major while he was in a displaced persons camp after World War II. He got him to sign off on a college application. So he came over here. He married my mom, whose dad came over, and her mother's father came over as well. So 3 generations of immigration.
And again, to Sean's question, do you do this as a hobby volunteer, or is this a business?
This is a very poorly paid business, but you do it for the cause.
Got it. And if President Trump asked you for your advice about American policy towards Ukraine, Russia, what would you ask him to do?
Go visit. It's the first thing I said after the scandal or what happened with the phone call with President Zelensky. Go visit Ukraine. That even back in 2019, I was saying that he's got to go visit Ukraine. He can leave Obama as the only president never to visit Ukraine if President Trump were to go. And I think it'll just change everything. It's changed everybody's mind who's gone over there, whether you're in the Senate, Congress, embassy, no matter what. So if he were to do that, I would say go and have a sit down with the troops. There's no better person than that, Sean, in the world that likes going and sitting with people.
Is it safe to fly in, or would you have to do the Biden train?
Wouldn't that be something if he were the first plane to fly in?
Yeah, but do you think that's safe?
Yeah, it's a game of chicken. It's a game of chicken, and it was the same thing for Putin.
It's high stakes.
Don't want to be wrong on that one.
you think Putin was going to fly over Ukraine to go to Turkey for that talk, or was he going to make a big circle around it? That's the question as well.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. We hope you'll come back regularly. How'd you find two-way?
I've been on here forever.
Okay. All right. Well, please come back regularly, and appreciate having you here. All right. Jeff, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind after you unmute. Thank you for being part of Two-Way.
Hey, me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, hey, how you guys doing? Yeah, I'm from the great state of New Jersey. So,
who you voting for governor?
Yeah, I'm going to run it back with Jack.
Okay. Yeah.
He narrowly missed last time. It was quite a surprise, and changed a lot of people's opinions about how viable a Republican candidate could be here. So, yeah, I'm going to run it back with him.
Okay. What's on your mind, sir?
Quick question about, and I hate to kind of beat this Biden thing into the ground, but given the many political headwinds that Biden faced over the past decade, including at the start of his, after he announced for presidency, he had the issues with the women, the concerns about his cognitive decline, which you've documented. I think Obama urged him not to run in 2016. Castro, Harris, and Booker challenging both his memory and his record on stage at the debates. I'm really curious about the why. Why did the Democratic Party establishment kind of rally around him? And my cynical mind makes me believe or wonder if it's because he was kind of inoffensive, but also controllable. And that's so the motivation, the why, really has me wondering why they kind of plowed all of these issues and the field out of the way for him.
Well,
Sean, Dan, go ahead, Dan.
I mean, they didn't in 20. I mean, look, if you go back to 2019, Kamala Harris, almost knocked him out in that first debate over school busing. She surged. Then in the next debate, she couldn't answer Medicaid for all or Medicare for all, and she collapsed. Elizabeth Warren then accelerated in the fall. And then she struggled to kind of to get beyond Medicare for all and began to try to almost pivot to the general. Then Bernie surged, right? What happened was they all knocked each other out over time. We as a party historically have gone with the moderate. We flirt with the progressive wing, and then we sober up and say, who do we think has the best chance to win the general election? If you go back to the early of 2020, the one guy who was consistently beating Trump in the polls was Joe Biden. And when Jim Clyburn rescued him in South Carolina, it did not take a lot for the party to say, we're so desperate after 4 years of Trump, right? Because remember what was going on at that point, right? Like it was the first term and the party had been so anti-Trump that they rallied around Biden. Biden then did make a deal with Warren and Sanders on personnel to get them to fully support him and not cause headaches the way they did to Hillary Clinton. So it was an evolution of the party kind of rallying around him. 2024 was a different story. That you're right. Like they just shut everything down because they thought he was too weak to have a primary. And it would just tear the party apart like 1980 with Kennedy versus Carter.
Sean.
Jeff, to Dan's point, I think once you're in, so there's a difference between 2020, and I think he did a great job of walking through the iterations there. Once you're in, you control everything. You control the party, so whether it's on either side. And he had a team that makes sure that they shut down any dissent. They kept the process in line. And so you either have to voluntarily do it or go to him privately. But, there was no one. I think the broader problem in the Democratic Party was there was no one that could stand up to him. No one that could go to him and say, dude, I mean, look at how we played the Clinton clip. They would have taken a Bill Clinton or an Obama, and Obama obviously wouldn't have been the right messenger to go to him and say, for the good of the party and the good of the country, you need to just be clear it's one term. And no one did.
Well, and the problem was the party is split between the progressives and the moderates. Look at the Israel college campus issue. So the theory was that if you went to him, that the natural heir would have been Harris, right? But he didn't believe in Kamala Harris. Most of the party didn't believe in Kamala Harris. The next calculation was, but she's going to insist on running. She's a Black woman. If you swing for her, right, and you take her out and the Black vote doesn't turn out, good luck, right? You will lose to Trump because it's going to be a game on the margins. If you swing and miss, your future is done because you went after a Black woman. The two most powerful constituencies in a Democratic primary are women and Blacks. So the calculation in the party was, we got to stick with Joe.
Jeff, thank you. All right. One thing I love about the two-way community is we got our experts. We love when our experts come visit. Scott knows a lot about drones and Jacqueline knows a lot about nutrition. I know why Scott's here today. Can't wait to hear what Jacqueline is. Scott, tell us what you think about the drone attack and what it means.
Real quick, can you hear me, guys?
Yes, yep. Sir.
So I have worked in the counter-drone sector for several years. I want to touch on Ukraine real quickly because it's far more important. So I've been to Russia 50 times. I had an appendectomy in Crimea once, which was pretty crazy. But what I want to say here, particularly to Sean, this is an attack on strategic nuclear weapons. This is crazy. It's an alarming escalation. It brings us closer to World War III. Real quick here, are you guys familiar that Sevastopol, it's a port on Crimea, has been a Russian port since the late 1700s? And keep in mind also that Khrushchev, who was Ukrainian, gave Crimea to the Ukraine in the 1960s. So it's a lot more complex than we're all talking about. But I think I just want to share this, is that Putin, if he had wanted to, could have shown a lot of damage to the other cities in Ukraine. We're about to find out that Putin's shown great restraint. And we also are about to find out, he can't invade France. He can't invade Germany. He can barely invade Ukraine. So that argument is crazy. And this is World War I trench
Do you think
warfare.
he wants Poland?
Poland, he's not going to get Poland. Do you know how many more people and soldiers and planes they have down? That's a great question. I wish we could talk more about it. He can't even invade Ukraine successfully, which is a very corrupt and incapable country. So Poland, by the way, is reaching GDP per capita of Japan right now. He can't.
But
he can't
keeps
attack these
saying
countries.
he wants Poland. He's been clear. His goal is to. I mean, his goal was to take Ukraine. You're saying he can't. He's not stopped. He thinks
he has stopped. This is the problem with the attack. It's trench warfare. This does nothing to change the fact that we've got this trench warfare line. It's just a dangerous escalation. I don't want to take more time on that. I know there's another caller here, but no, Dan, he can't do it. This is
can't, or he doesn't want it.
All right, hold on, Scott. Thank you. Always grateful to have you. All right, now let's learn why I should stop drinking Diet Coke or whatever else Jacqueline wants to tell us. Jacqueline, welcome.
Mark, just to quote you, you'll have to pry the Diet Coke out of my cold, dead hands. Honestly, I'm worried. This is completely now off topic for the rest of the subject matter of the show, but I came to talk about the MAHA report and the egregious citations and errors.
We've been negligent in not talking about it, so please briefly introduce it because we're up against the clock. But tell us what we should know about that. So
just to give the full picture for those who are not up to date, essentially the MAHA report was published and it was discovered that there were a number of citations in the report that were completely fabricated. And the way that they were fabricated, if you've ever used ChatGPT, particularly for anything that is scientific in nature, ChatGPT does these hallucinations where they're completely making up these AI hallucinations, exactly something that Chat just mentioned. And it's very common, but to see this on a scientific report from the administration and then to hear Caroline Leavitt call it a formatting issue, which I understand, this is her job, of course. But I think, at the very least, the acknowledgement perhaps of simply I don't even know what's exactly. We screwed up. We fired all our scientists. We have no credible people left to actually put this report together. We have no one with any scientific basis or understanding of how the scientific method actually works. It would be nice. But that's, I don't expect that. The part that I do expect is perhaps some level of humility, because all I can see right now is that this administration that I voted for, that I support otherwise, right, is doing the exact same thing that we saw with the Biden administration, which is just the complete gaslighting of everyday Americans who may not know very much about science, but know enough to know when something is wrong. If you just looked at the key findings from the MAHA report, as I did, and you know anything about the subject matter, I didn't need to look at the citations to know that it was inaccurate. I'll tell you that much.
All right,
so I'm just wondering, I know we're running out of time. I'm just wondering your preliminary thoughts on this, and perhaps we need more time in a different show to talk about it.
Okay, Sean, real quick.
I've only looked at the high level stuff. I'm aware that there's acknowledgement issues. I agree with you in the sense that if you screw up, own it and just say we're going to fix it. We're going to do it right. I wish that I can't believe they got it through and out to the White House without somebody vetting it a little bit more. I can't say I've looked at it the level of in-depth that you have. So I will just say that if there are mistakes, they should be corrected.
Yeah, and I think especially when the one big Achilles heel you have is that people think Kennedy doesn't trust science and make stuff up, on vaccines, whether it's true or not. So to feed into the narrative is not helpful to the movement if you're trying to achieve real change.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a level of sloppiness and carelessness. Same with Doge. They're undermining the work they're doing by just being so sloppy and saying, well, we're doing so much, we're going to make mistakes. No, just you don't have to. You can do what you want to do and not make mistakes. Jacqueline, thank you for coming. I'm sorry we're so short, but please come back soon. Sean, what do you have tonight?
Christina Bobb was the staff attorney when when Mar-a-Lago was raided in August of 2022. She tells the story I'm going to have her to talk about. She's never actually told the story of what happened that day. So I'm excited. She's going to come on tonight and talk extensively about how that raid went down, how the FBI handled it. She was like I said, she was the point person that oversaw the DOJ and the FBI. And so I'm excited about this.
Great. Pending breaking news, two more two-ways today. At noon Eastern time, Meghan McCain, Citizen McCain, with her guest Sphere, who's been on two-way tonight. A fascinating gentleman. Spear, not Sphere. Spear, from Under the Desk News. We'll talk to Meghan about just about everything. And then at 6 o'clock Eastern time, two-way tonight, we're reuniting two of my favorites, especially when they're together. Adam Mockler of Midas Touch and Amber Duke, senior editor of the Daily Caller. We will talk about the day's news and welcome, of course, your input. Thank you all for watching. Sorry,
hey,
we're
Mark,
in
real quick, just a quick preview for tomorrow. There's doing this thing at Harvard today. John Fetterman and Dave McCormick doing this event today. I think it'll be interesting for us tomorrow to see how that goes. For all the concern about Fetterman, I think we should keep an eye on this thing for tomorrow to see how this thing goes. I'm just one of those forward-looking.
I've been watching it out of the corner of my eye on my other device, and it seems like it's going fine. Fetterman's not wearing a tie, and it's at the Kennedy Library, not at the Harvard, I believe.
He hasn't switched parties yet.
Maybe he hasn't switched parties as of yet. And I used the wrong pronoun in addition to mispronouncing Spears' name, I used the wrong pronoun, for which I am sorry. Thank you for watching. Sorry we went over. We owe everybody a minute. If you send in an application to twoway.tv, we'll get it back to you tomorrow. We'll end early maybe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your questions. See you later tonight. Have a good day.